Googling, meaning the act of using the search engine Google to find information on the internet, was ranked the most useful word of 2002 by the American Dialect Society. Nowadays, Google has become so massive, essential, and overwhelmingly powerful that it changed the way we use the internet permanently. We will be exploring the role of Google as an information gatekeeper with respect to information literacy.
What is Google? As most of us know, Google LLC is an American multinational tech company that offers several internet-related products and services. It was founded in 1998 by Larry Page and Sergey Brin. Google.com is the most visited website worldwide. Several other Google-owned websites also are on the list of most popular websites, including YouTube and Blogger. On the list of most valuable brands, Google is ranked second by Forbes and fourth by Interbrand. Google generates most of its revenues from advertising. This includes sales of apps, purchases made in app, digital content products on Google and YouTube, Android and licensing and service fees, including fees received for Google Cloud offering. 46% of its profit was from clicks, cost per clicks, amounting to US dollar 109,652 million in 2017. The second key term that we have to define is gatekeeping, and this is one is a little more tricky. The term gatekeeping was first coined by Kurt Lewin in 1947. He used the term to describe how a wife or mother was the gatekeeper because of her role in deciding which foods are placed on the dinner table. In a more academic sense, then, a gatekeeping process would then be on involves doing some of the following: selecting, channeling, shaping, manipulating, and deleting information. For example, a gatekeeping process might involve selecting which information to publish, or channeling information through a channel, or deleting information by removing it, or shaping information into a particular form. The reason why this is tricky is because any information provider could technically be considered a gatekeeper to a certain degree. For example, librarians and bookstores choose which book to order, display, and advertise. Another form of gatekeeping could be due to one's role in shaping our social world, for instance, with the media. They select which stories to run, print, or discard, at which time, and in which order. Simply because these platforms do not provide all the information available in the world, an impossible feat, or curated in it some form.
As such, we can clearly see how Google, as an algorithmically controlled search engine that curates our every search result, will be considered a gatekeeper. As such, we will be mainly focusing on the impact and motive that Google has as a gatekeeper, as well as the means through which this is achieved, as compared to attempting to prove that Google is a gatekeeper.
Next, we will discuss the history of Google as a gatekeeper, most notably through the case study of Google testifying before the US Congressional Subcommittee on Antitrust, Competition Policy, and Consumer Rights. The hearing was titled "The Power of Google: Serving Consumers or Threatening Competition" on September 21st, 2011. This is simply one of the many lawsuits that have been filed against Google on issues such as privacy concerns, censorship, search neutrality, antitrust, and abuse of its monopoly position just in recent history. This specific hearing was based on the idea that Google, a platform that once sought to direct users to websites that best addressed their queries, has now entered into the competitive market with alternatives that rival those original websites. Google now has their own products, such as Google Places, Google Product Search, Finance, Maps, etc., that are displayed on the Google search engine. It appears to be a complete and total monopoly. This case study also explored the various techniques that Google uses to ensure that users never leave this Google universe, some of which we will now discuss. Firstly, deceptive display. Basically, when Google takes up half the result page with their own platforms, visually overemphasizing their own products instead of including other websites in this top ranking as well. Secondly, search manipulation, where Google excludes or penalizes competing sites, essentially making them disappear from the internet. Remember Hotel Trivago? the website we used to often go to for any information on hotels. When we Google hotels, Trivago popped up as the last ad link. Trivago, as a normal search result, only popped up as the second last website on the first page. Even TripAdvisor, another popular travel website, was shown towards the end of the page. More than half of the page were suggestions from Google's own platforms or as ads. Thirdly, unauthorized content scraping, or essentially stealing content developed by other websites such as reviews without permission and sometimes even without attribution. And lastly, exclusionary conduct in mobile, buying up companies in the mobile search area to make Google the default engine on most of the popular mobile devices. As can be seen from these techniques, Google, as a profit-making corporation that receives a majority of its revenue from ads, is clearly trying to maximize the extent of exposure that users have with content that is profitable to them. The harm here may be that the quality of the information is not the core focus, but the monetary value of various websites to Google. Thus, from this example, we can see that discussions on Google being a gatekeeper of information is not a new one.
Nowadays, there is no doubt left that Google acts as an information gatekeeper on the internet, and this also means that nowadays other aspects surrounding Google are in the focus of researchers, but also governments. Pending questions include whether Google influences our ethical decision making by how and what information gets displayed, or possibly even displaying one-sided information. This means that the way Google ranks search query results has a possible influence on the forming of opinions. While it is only a part of Google's services, in the sphere of Google Scholar it has been shown that Google's algorithm prefers research in the English language and actually ranks those papers before papers from different languages when a multilingual search query is entered. Even if those papers in a different language have a higher number of citations, possibly meaning they are more relevant, they get ranked lower. Search engines in general are having trouble with gender biases. Researchers have found out that they do play a role in gender stereotype reinforcement. They do this through the ranking of their search results, where they choose stereotype conforming results. An example could be that if someone were to look up nurses or hairdressers, that the results ranked higher up are seen to be more female. This could be through wording, but also generally displaying women as nurses or hairdressers. In this way, also Google plays a role in the reinforcement of gender stereotypes. A big issue with this, though, is that researchers are unsure on how to solve this problem, as there are instances, for example when Googling women in parliament, where one does want the results to be gendered. Not only researchers are concerned with Google, but also governments are concerned with the market power that Google has. In 2020, the Department of Justice from the US sued Google for violating the antitrust laws and its business practices as a monopolist. In October 2020, there were 3 open investigations against Google in the US alone. Next to that, the appeal against the ruling of the European Union that issued a fine of $2.8 billion against Google because of violations of the antitrust law when it came to Google Shopping was lost in November 2021. All of this shows in theory that there are some issues with the practices of Google. As a next step, we wanted to take a look at some of these issues firsthand. We wanted to see transnational differences in Google's ranking and draw our own conclusions.
In order to gain these practical insights and to find out ourselves how Google acts as an information gatekeeper, we decided to take the user perspective by conducting 2 different searches on Google. The transnationality of this approach was given since the students of our group were conducting the research from the countries of Singapore, India, Austria, Germany, and the US. For the first of our 2 experiments, we searched the phrase "Is the Earth flat?" research, which was supposed to trigger controversial or even conspiratorial results. The term research was added for us to see if we would also get scientific results from Google Scholar about that topic. Every student of the group was then supposed to search this phrase in English and if possible in their native language on 3 different privacy levels each. This means we conducted the searches on normal Google, then in incognito mode, and as well in the Tor browser in order for us to see how much the first page results depend on the personal data that Google has collected about us. The results contained the following aspects. First of all students of the group got displayed the same 3 scholarly articles, except the student in India who didn't get any. Secondly, all our results contain 2 to 3 articles on average in favor of the flat earth theory, no matter our location. In general, we all got very similar results on the normal Google, but in slightly different order. Given the fact that most users only look at the first 3 or 4 results, this could influence opinion-building processes, since the order of results and the position of conspiratorial articles would decide which information we receive and can be seen as proof for gatekeeping actions of Google. Further results showed that the incognito search results were in all languages identical with the normal ones, while the English Tor results were more diverse and even contained almost only articles in favor of the flat earth theory when the search was conducted with the default search engine DuckDuckGo that doesn't use private data at all. This is a very concerning observation and raises the question if Google's gatekeeping function can even be seen as a positive aspect, since it seems to prevent users from going down the conspiracy rabbit hole.
As part of the ongoing investigation on the topic Google as a gatekeeper of information, along with searching about a fact-based question on Google search engine, we wondered if the search results would yield any different insights if we tried to look for a question that is subject to discussion and debate. So we looked for the phrase Afghanistan crisis, who is responsible? The results were surprising. Each of our teammates sitting in a different country got a different set of results, varying in the opinions about the crisis and also varying in the number of results yielded. On further analysis, we found that results for some team members presented a biased opinion, while some mostly got advertisements to aid people suffering from the crisis, and some got unbiased articles as well. These are Nadia's results, who was sitting in India. Here we can clearly see the first result's heading is a direct blame on Pakistan. Meghana, who was sitting in Singapore at the same time, got a different set of results, some biased, some not. While Madeline's results were mostly advertisements asking for aid of the victims. This is just one of the many examples where we think that the region you are in may have an immediate effect on the results we get, and can also play a huge role in forming an opinion on subjective, controversial, and sensitive issues.
And now for our conclusion. We began this research project with a simple question: is Google an informational gatekeeper? Through our readings, our discussions, and our hands-on experiments, we answered that question with a resounding yes. Google, which determines which of the billions of web pages show up for any given search, clearly acts as a gatekeeper within the given definition by late law. And, as we've demonstrated in our experiments, the order in which web pages are presented to a viewer can drastically impact their impression on their subject of inquiry. Of course, there are countless additional questions to explore regarding Google as a gatekeeper. Does Google have a bias with regards to what results they present? Does Google use its position of power as an informational gatekeeper to increase its own market share and wealth? Does Google intentionally change what information is presented based on the demographics of the person doing the search? These are all important and pressing questions as evidenced by the multiple lawsuits against Google, but are larger topics than we have chosen to delve into with this particular project. It's important to note that Google's role as a gatekeeper isn't inherently a negative thing. With the internet as large as it is, without some form of gatekeeping, it would be extremely difficult to navigate the web in any meaningful way. But, to quote the late Stan Lee, with great power comes great responsibility. What responsibilities does Google have as a gatekeeper? Should Google actively suppress conspiracies, such as the flat earth theory? As we saw in our first experiment, Google successfully did its job in curating the millions of flat earth-related web pages to something we could manageably browse, but in doing so offered us websites that directly promoted a theory that is clearly bunk. And, with regards to our second experiment, the order in which Google decided to present articles related to our search phrase Afghanistan crisis, who is responsible, can make a massive difference in how opinions regarding touchy political matters are formed. For example, Nadia, who lives in India, received a top-of-the-page result that blamed India's geopolitical antagonist Pakistan as being directly responsible for the Afghan crisis. Ought Google take responsibility or ownership for the biases its searches may create or reinforce? And should they be liable for false or harmful information amplified via their platform? Of course, these are difficult questions to answer, but they are questions worth exploring nonetheless. Regardless of Google's personal responsibility, it's clear that the tools provided by information literacy in general and meta-literacy specifically, such as the metacognitive and self-reflective approach to informational exploration, are invaluable in helping 21st century learners navigate the Google landscape with an increased degree of awareness, criticality, and confidence.
We are of course indebted to the great work of many researchers and journalists who have spent years exploring these topics. The resources we've made use of can be found here. We thank you for watching.